Okay, one really cool thing about going to a movie by yourself that I didn't even think about is that you get both cup holders. That alone was awesome because I got my water in one, my Starbucks in the other. All the popcorn was mine, so I could put as much butter on it as I wanted to. So the benefit of deciding to go and watch a movie to review. What? 2 drink holders! All the popcorn's mine! Nobody wants my Sour Patch Kids! Winning! Hey everybody! Happy second day of Halloween! It is October 2nd, and I actually meant to do this episode a couple of days ago, but the weekend got really crazy. It was the last weekend of a musical that my daughter and I were in, so everything got a little crazy, so I'm finally getting around to doing this episode. I actually went and saw the reboot of Flatliners the day it came out. It came out Friday, and I went to go see it on September 29th, one of the very first showings for it. And I'd intended to have my review up by that evening, but was not able to get it done. So now, a few days later, I'm finally getting that review up. This reboot for Flatliners is a reboot of the 1990 film Flatliners. And it's of course, they've modernized it a lot. It's got its positive points. It wasn't an altogether terrible film, but you know, the original still stands quite solidly alone as, to me, a true cult classic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give a little, not a play-by-play, I don't want to totally spoil it, but I'm going to kind of give a couple of highlights of the film, and then I'm going to go into my totally professional critical review, because you guys know I'm totally professional over here. Anyway. No, I'm not. And gonna go ahead and do that, and then let you guys decide for yourselves whether or not you want to go see it. So my first observation right off the bat is that, much like the original film, hair seems to be its own character in this film. From the girls with their flowing bangs, to Ray with his half-man bun thing going on, to the original, where, of course, we've got mullets for days. It was 1990. Hairstyles were still kind of in that confused state. So, of course, we've got a lovely mullet being worn by Kiefer Sutherland and by Kevin Bacon. And speaking of Kiefer Sutherland, he makes a cameo appearance in this film. Like, remember in the original film, Kiefer Sutherland's character's name was Nelson Wright. In this film, in the reboot, his name is Barry Wolfson. He's Dr. Barry Wolfson. I had to look it up, because, I mean, they don't ever say his name in the film. And I was really hoping it was going to be Nelson, and it was just going to be like, I really would have loved to have seen his character have a little bit more knowledge, kind of, because there is at one point in the film, he basically says to 4 of the students, I know you're hiding something. And I kind of wish that would have been earlier in the film, and he kind of almost would have been a mentor to them. Or not even a mentor, but really somebody who's like, I know what you're doing, and you guys have absolutely no idea what you've opened, or something kind of like that. I feel like they should have just gone ahead and gone with the obvious choice. If you're going to cast Kiefer Sutherland, you should have just gone with the obvious choice of making it a sequel. There would have been nothing wrong with that. In fact, I feel like it would have been a brilliant choice to have made it a sequel. I feel like it would have given a lot more credibility to the film, because they, at the beginning, it's like they had it, and then at a certain point in the film, the house of cards kind of started falling, and then after that, they just couldn't stop it. Now, of course, Kiefer Sutherland's character in this, he plays, they're all medical students, just like in the original film, it's medical students, and he plays one of their professors. And again, I feel the obvious choice would have just been to make him Dr. Nelson Wright, and just not been blatantly obvious with it, but obvious enough to where you know, oh, so this is his character that he was in the original Flatliners. But they didn't do that. Missed opportunity, guys. Tisk, tisk. I think perhaps they were afraid of making the obvious choice, but really, honestly, I think a lot of moviegoers, myself included, would have preferred that. If you're going to have him make a cameo, have him make a cameo as his original character, or don't do it at all. I have such a crush on Ellen Page. She is awesome. Even though her character in the film, now her character, everybody in the film performed great. The actors, this was never an issue with the actors. This comes entirely from those who put the film together. The actors did a great job. Ellen Page was awesome. She plays Dr. Courtney Holmes. From the beginning of the film, you can tell she's going to kind of take the Kiefer Sutherland character position, I suppose. She's the one who decides that they need to give this life after death thing a try. She does this because she was responsible for the death of her younger sister 9 years before. Ellen Page's story arc is like the longest PSA for no texting while driving that I have ever experienced in my life. Alright, so where they decide to do their experiment. In the original film, you know, it was in the gallery. It was like, we're not going to try and hide. I mean, you know, we're not trying to kill each other in here. In the reboot, I will say they make a better choice in terms of setting. It also kind of got me wondering if this is actually a real thing. Okay, so, apparently, there are basement hospitals and hidden hospitals throughout the entire United States that are fully functioning hospitals that are set up for natural disasters or for huge scale disasters. So where they decide to perform this life after death experiment is in this subterranean hospital, this fully functioning hospital that has security sentries going around, you know, every 45 minutes or so. So they're in a time crunch for how long they can, you know, kill their friend, give their friend a couple of minutes to be dead, and then bring their friend back. And then they had to clean up. Here's my question. Okay, so Courtney tells 2 of her fellow students to meet her at a certain location inside this subterranean hospital. Okay, well, when shit goes bad and Courtney's like dead and they don't know if they can bring her back, one of the characters sends a text to another one of the medical students, who then seems to already know where they're at and gets there in like record time. And then when he can't get her back or something, he sends a text to the other medical student who's part of the 5, and then she gets there in record time. And it's like, okay, Courtney had to put in a code to get to where they were going, Ellen Page's character. She had to show these other characters where it was at, but then the other 2, it's like, oh yeah, I know where the one room down the dark hallway in the subterranean hospital that I have to put a special code in for is at. Can we explain that? Because I feel like continuity errors were really a major situation there. I could be overthinking it, but that's what I do. Although I have a lot of reservations about this reboot, I will say that the sequence after Courtney dies the first time, well, everybody only dies once in this film, not like the first one, where Kiefer Sutherland's character actually goes back in. Everybody only dies once in this one. Well, not everybody. Just like in the original, there's one that doesn't die. In the original, it was Oliver Platt, who played Steckel, who was the one who was writing his autobiography the entire time on the voice recorder thingy. In the reboot, Diego Luna, who I mentioned, the lovely half-man bun, he's our lovely half-man bun having cat, who plays Ray. He is the one who opts out of flatlining in this film. So apparently dying makes you want to bake bread, run 12 miles, and it makes you really, really freaking smart. They do something in this film that they really didn't do in the original film. They do kind of play more into the characters' behaviors after flatlining. In the first film, they jump directly into the repercussions. In this film, it's like, okay, they flatline, then, like, it's at euphoria just after, and then the shit hits the fan. In the original, the shit just hit the fan. Right off the bat, it was shit fan everywhere. It also makes you hella good at piano, or at least where Ellen Page's character is concerned. She starts playing a song that was her sister's favorite song. She hadn't played piano in like 12 years, and she's just totally like she hadn't missed a day. Which is then what makes the other characters decide that they want to die too, because hey, she baked bread, ran 12 miles, is really good at her homework, and she's all of a sudden totally musically inclined. This dying sounds awesome. So the next one to die is the frat bro kind of guy in the group, Jamie, who is played by James Norton. He decides, oh hey, she got really good at school stuff, so hey, if I die, maybe I'll do better at this doctoring thing. So he is the next to flatline, only he decides he wants to flatline for 2 solid minutes. Now, if you know anything about CPR and brain death and whatnot, after about 4 minutes, roughly 4 minutes, your brain cells start to die at a far more rapid rate because your brain's not getting oxygen. Just like every other part of your body, your brain needs oxygen in order to survive and to work. Well, of course, they're pushing it. In the original film, I think it's Julia Roberts' character takes it all the way to 5 minutes. She would not have woken up so bright and shiny, I don't think. But the original film also has a lot of medical inaccuracies that the reboot actually doesn't make. They actually make the very obvious statement of, oh hey, you can't hit somebody with the defibrillators to put their heart rhythm back right if they are in complete cardiac arrest because they have no heart rhythm. The defibrillators correct the messed up rhythm. If there's no pulse, you need to do CPR in order to get the heart pumping. Well, in the first film, they're just like, oh hey, let's just hit this dead person with electricity. Magic! And they're alive again. But that's not how it works. Life is not magic. Death is absolutely not magic. Defibrillators do not work on a dead heart. CPR 101. Okay, so after that, that's when the bad shit starts to happen. Ellen Page doesn't let everybody know at first because it's like, okay, maybe it's just the residual brain fog from having been dead for a minute. But she starts seeing things and hearing things that are reminiscent of her dead sister. Much like in the original film where Kiefer Sutherland starts seeing the dog that was, whose death he was partially responsible for. One great thing about the reboot, no injured or dead puppies. I was all about that, because I don't like seeing injured and dead puppies. Dying makes you want to drink and smash walls. So, in a sequence after, let's see, Jamie's death, and then his coming back to life, Ellen Page's character, Courtney, decides, oh, this stupid wall that's in my apartment needs to go. So a sledgehammer just appears out of thin air because, you know, people keep a sledgehammer in the living room of their oddly very nice apartment for being a second-year medical student. Or maybe she's a fourth-year medical student. Which honestly means she should probably have even a shabbier setting that she's living in. You don't start to make the big bucks until after you graduate medical school. And then you have to pay back all your student loans. So you really don't start making the big bucks until, I can only imagine, far later. I'm not a doctor for obvious reasons. I'm entirely too ADD, and I would probably leave my cell phone in somebody's chest cavity. So after they smash the wall in her apartment, which she's definitely not going to get the security deposit back for, they decide to run outside and play because it's all of a sudden hailing outside. And it's like, oh, let's go play in the hail in our underwear because we just recently died and it seems like a fun thing to do. I personally have no desire to ever get pelted by hail. Of course, I grew up in Texas where hail can get about this big. That's the kind of dead that you don't come back from. Apparently medical school students can also dress however what they like. See, I noticed in the original, at least for the first part, Kevin Bacon's character was in scrubs, right? Well, in this reboot, we've got like hipster chic, frat boy, business casual, stilettos, maybe homeless wearing a hoodie, and then just like, you know, conventional jeans and t-shirt, but as long as you put a lab coat over the top of it, you're a legit medical school student. Now let's take a brief moment for best quotes from the films. Okay, first we're going to do a quote from the original film, delivered by Oliver Platt as they were on their way to go stop Kiefer Sutherland from deciding to flatline himself. And I quote, "You don't think he'd try to flatline by himself? That would be suicide." And now for the best line of dialogue from the reboot, which actually comes from, I guess, what would be Oliver Platt's predecessor or whatever, since Ray decided to not flatline. So I guess these are the guys who kind of are the resident geniuses. He said, "You think this makes you better. This makes you dead." Why yes, Mr. Diego Luna. Flatlining yourself does, in fact, make you dead. So we know that both of these gentlemen's characters were the Captain Obvious of the film, but they were probably also the two smartest characters because they didn't let their friends kill them and trust that their friends were going to bring them back to life. Listen, I love my friends. I know my friends have my best interest in mind. I have their best interest in mind. Just know this now. Even if we were medical school students and y'all were the top performers, I would still never let you kill me so that I could see if there was life after death. I'm good. I'm totally good with finding out later. Like when I die for one time. And that's it. Die makes you want to drive it like you stole it and party. One thing both films have in common is a bonfire party thing. So, but in the original film, it's the night that Kevin Bacon's character and Julia Roberts' character both decide to flatline. It's Halloween. In the reboot, it is the night that Ellen Page's character goes home, has a freak-out moment, records her "I'm sorry for what we've done" thing on her phone, thinks she sees her dead sister, falls from the fire escape, and dies. And that, my friends, is where the film lost me. Death makes you horny. We find this out when both Jamie and Sophia, who is played by Kiersey Clemons, decide to go back to her mom's place because her mom is a very overprotective mother and has moved all over with her. They go back to her mom's place and have a very loud, fun time. This would be after she flatlines. But also Marlo, who is played by the Vampire Diaries' Nina Dobrev, and Ray, again, Diego Luna, go back to her place, and they too decide to enjoy a rather enjoyable time. And then the shit just starts hitting the fan all over the place for everybody. Houseboat Harry finally has a bad trip. See, Jamie lives on a houseboat because he's a rich kid, so. The ghosts of his past decide to visit in the way of a girl who he dated and got pregnant. He was supposed to go with her for her abortion, but he chickened out. So that is the very aggressive ghost that seems to be following him, right down to stabbing him in the hand and throwing him off his boat. Like, what's the deal with that? And again, with all the fancy digs that these young medical students have, I mean, most of my friends that went to medical school, I'm pretty sure, crashed on a futon and lived off of top ramen until they started making a paycheck that was even significant enough for them to buy the good soup, like Progresso. Dying makes you do a Rubik's Cube really great. I feel like I should have been taking tally for how many times they said flatlining in the film, because I'm pretty sure it was somewhere in the ballpark of at least 60, if not, like, more. Like, at least once a minute. Hey, ever been curious to look at your dead friend in the morgue? Yeah, me neither. I will say that I appreciate the cheap effects. I mean, I'm not trying to say that in a derogatory way, but when Nina Dobrev when her character Marlo is in the morgue, after Ellen Page's character, Courtney, takes a swan dive off of the fire escape, she has to go in there to find Courtney's phone. And then, like, shit gets weird. And she starts seeing the person who she feels responsible for killing during, like, her first few months as helping as a medical school, whatever they do in medical school. I don't know. I'm pretty sure this movie was highly inaccurate anyways. Anyway, she gave a guy the wrong medication and he died. Well, she's in the morgue. Shit gets weird. And, I mean, they went straight for the dry ice and green light effect. And I actually really appreciate that because being that I'm still trying to afford decent sound equipment so that I can work on a web series, I appreciate when dry ice and green light bulbs are, like, your go-to. It's like, you guys, y'all went for the cheap effects. And I like that. I appreciate that because that's pretty much all I can afford. Actually, you know what? I can't even afford that because I'm pretty sure dry ice is probably, I mean, not horribly expensive, but I'm also probably not incredibly cheap. A fog machine, you can totally forget about that right now because I've got to be able to buy milk and stuff. So it's like, so I will give you guys major awesome points on that. So it looks like the guilt wraiths are finally in full force. I call them guilt wraiths because, I mean, it seems like the most appropriate terminology to use. And how do you make a guilt wraith go away? Well, that's simple, stupid. You just apologize. And actually, this is the point when I saw a couple down in front of me get up and walk out. So, like I said, I would never have walked out. I like to finish films, especially films that I am going to on my own money. But I didn't feel it was so bad that you needed to walk out. It was not so good, but it was not so bad that you needed to up and walk out. This is also the part of the film, I'm pretty sure they walked out after this part because it didn't make any sense medically. Nina Dobrev's character was able to defibrillate herself into cardiac arrest. Like, how do you even do that? Again, I'm no doctor, so I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's not how any of that works. And now for sudden narration. Where was that the entire film? All of the sudden, Nina Dobrev's character, Marlowe, who also I would not have expected, I guess, but I don't know. I mean, they killed off the character who I felt they should have not killed off. I don't feel they should have killed anybody off. I don't feel it accomplished anything, but then all of a sudden there's narration and everybody's laughing and smiling together. Of course, at the end of the film, they destroy all of the evidence they were collecting. What they were doing is putting the brain thingamajiggies on the noggin and then reading brain patterns. They obviously didn't do that in the first film. A lot of the technology wasn't readily available. In this one, they were able to scan the cat and all that jazz, and so that was the purpose of it, was to see if there is still brain activity for a significant time after death. I probably should have hit that at the beginning, but I mean, I told you guys at some point, right? So it's all good. I took my notes in the dark, so it looks like a drunk monkey wrote them. There was a guy up towards the top that he's probably, like, I assume, like a film critic or whatever, and had his laptop, and I'm like, oh, that's cool and official, as I'm, like, trying to write by the light of the film, hoping for bright scenes. So I'd be like, oh, so I'm trying to read this now, and you know, they say doctors have terrible handwriting, so perhaps this is my indication that I should have gone to medical school. I can categorically say that you guys would not want me working on you. Greatest hair in the film also goes to the two characters who are the resurrectionists, which would have been Kevin Bacon in the original film, and then Diego Luna in the reboot. Both of these guys seem to be the guys that were really good at bringing people back to life. They're also the guys that were able to wear unconventional hairstyles in such a manner that it actually kind of looked good on them. Kiefer Sutherland also brought his mullet back in this film, and I thought I should mention that. Because, like I said, hair was just, they should have given credits to the hairstyles, too. Like, this one was the Charlie. This one was the Hank. This one is the Mildred. And this one we like to call the Cletus. And now to my actual review of the film by questions that I wrote in my notebook. Question number 1. How did it relate to the original? Okay, so I almost feel like it was a continuation, or maybe that was what they went into it intending for it to be, and then they just totally shit that away. I feel like it should have been a continuation, but as far as I can tell, it was just a standalone film. And again, I feel like they missed an opportunity there. Had they made it a sequel, had they made it a continuation, just an updated kind of like, okay, 27 years ago this happened, and now a new group of medical students has decided to try and test death and risk everything to see if there's life after death. But instead, they just decided to go a straightforward film. And so I don't think it was a sequel. I don't think it was a continuation. It was just a standalone where they decided to have an incredibly obvious cameo, which they so should have taken advantage of and didn't. There's a really telling scene after Ellen Page's character's death, which I still don't agree with, where Kiefer Sutherland's character sees the 4 remaining students, and he's like, I feel like you guys are hiding something. And it's like, at that moment, it's like, this is the moment in the film that it should have happened sooner in the film, and it should have been that opportunity where it's like, okay, and this is where we have him find something and be like, listen, guys, you don't know what you're messing with. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about. And that's all they would have had to have done. That's it. Make him Dr. Wright. They wouldn't even have had to make him Dr. Nelson. Like, it would have, Dr. Wright. Because a lot of people don't know his character as Nelson Wright. They just know him as Nelson. And it would have been like just that perfect Easter egg. And it would have been so good. And it would have improved the film for a lot of people who are fans of the original, like myself, so much more. But they missed the mark by a mile and a half, 10 by 10 miles. They just missed the mark completely. It was not a good situation. Moving on! Were there any notable cameos in the film? Why, yes. I just mentioned him, none other than the iconic Kiefer Sutherland, who in this film played Dr. Barry Wolfson. And he had a cane, because I guess they decided to give him the Dr. House treatment. I don't know. My thoughts on the film. Okay, I enjoyed it, but the original, in my opinion, is still far superior. The original is a cult classic, and it's a cult classic for a reason. Yeah, it's got its absurdities, but the film altogether, it's an entire whole film. Each character's situation was their own separate situation, but each situation made sense. I feel like it missed a lot of opportunities. I feel like there were a lot of opportunities that the writers, the directors, everybody could have taken. And really not even the directors. The directing itself, the presentation was great. This kind of goes back to the writers and the producers and the people, the decision makers for the film. This goes back to them. I feel like there were missed opportunities. I feel like there were holes in the story. I feel like there were places where they made a drastic decision where perhaps they shouldn't have made such a drastic decision. For example, killing Ellen Page's character, I feel like her character living would have actually benefited the film a lot more. In the original, Kiefer Sutherland's character is able to apologize to the boy that he wronged after the guilt of this situation literally beats the crap out of him. I feel like Ellen Page being able to apologize and come to terms with what happened with her sister, and then moving on and moving forward, maybe, I feel like it would have been a better story. I feel like they could have created a better story, but I know they were going for the horror angle, and that, hey, somebody's got to die. Actually, no. No, nobody has to die. That's not a rule. There is no rule in the film writing checklists where it's like, okay, somebody always has to die. No. No, in fact, sometimes keeping them alive actually makes the film a better film altogether. Pros to this film. The pacing was solid. The story was solid. It was a solid story that they were trying to tell, but it did fall apart at a certain point. And it's a very obvious point when it fell apart. The characters were pretty well developed in terms of their personalities and who they were. I feel like they tried to kind of give you a little backstory on them and kind of give you their personalities and stuff. I don't feel like they entirely missed the mark there, but perhaps they almost even put more focus on that and not as much on developing the present and the present situation the characters were in, and how that present situation related to their guilt from the past. I do have to say, though, at the end, when the 4 surviving characters are all together, talking, and they're talking about Ellen Page's character and how much they miss her, there's a man sitting at the piano, because they're at the same little bar that they were at the beginning when they were all together, and the man starts playing the song that was Ellen Page's little sister's favorite song that Ellen Page played at the beginning, and that's how they end the film. I will say that right there was brilliant, but I feel it could have still been done with her character still alive. As far as medical accuracy, I will also give this film a check, because the 1990 film, there were far more medical foobars in that one. This one, at least I will say, as far as I know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. Don't ever let me work on anything aside from a Barbie that's got the flu, because that would be a bad idea. But at least the little bit I do know, I feel like they tried a little bit harder, at least, with medical accuracy, but at the end of the day, that's not the most important part of the story. But it's at least nice to know that the writers did their research. The actors, each one of them gave 100%. I cannot say one bad thing about the performance. They gave 100%. The director, I feel it was a really nicely put together film. The pacing was good. Editing, the directing, it looked good. It was visually a very visually pleasing film. My biggest qualm is just with how the story was presented. Which brings me to my cons. The plot holes, for example. How did Ray and Marlo know where this subterranean hospital room was at? I do feel like it was a bit underdeveloped. Again, going back to Marlo defibrillating herself, or just certain things within the film. The sudden narration at the end. There was no narration at all, and then suddenly Marlo's narrating at the end. I feel like, like I said, I feel like instead of Courtney's character dying, perhaps it should have been how Kiefer Sutherland's character made amends. If they were afraid that it was going to be too close to the original, it's a reboot. It's okay to be close to the original. You're rebooting a film, so it's okay if you tell the same story in a different setting with different characters in a slightly different way. It's okay to still use that aspect, the forgiveness aspect, versus the, hey, my dead sister's ghost, or the guilt of my having killed my sister caused me to die. Overall, I do feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities. It wasn't a terrible film. It was not a great film. But it's not one I would probably go see again or buy or probably ever watch again. But it is what it was what it was for what it was. It was a reboot. Most reboots miss the mark. This, unfortunately, was one of them. So, I'm going to give it 5 out of 10 Charlie Z heads. Alright, what will I be reviewing next? Well, Cult of Chucky comes out in the next couple of days, so I will be watching that. I'm really anxiously anticipating this film. If you've watched my show from the beginning, you know that the Child's Play franchise is my favorite. So, I am very excited about this film, and I am really hoping it doesn't disappoint me. Curse of Chucky did not. Curse of Chucky was brilliant, and I cannot wait to see Cult of Chucky. It looks like it's going to be pretty solid, so I am hoping that it is. Unlike a lot of people, who have watched the bootleg version, I have chosen not to do that because Don Mancini is awesome and I would never do that to him ever. He created my favorite horror franchise. Why would I watch a bootleg version of one of his films and just, no, As always, I want to thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button down there. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Tell your friends about me. Share my video on your Twitters and your Facebooks and your whatnots. And as always, thank you so much, because if it weren't for you guys watching, I would just be talking to my computer.